It's Pride Month. So let's take a look at a show that really went under the radar earlier this year about being trans in a small community. This is a sitcom starring the great Laverne Cox. Let's talk about Amazon Prime's Clean Slate. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my TV review for Clean Slate. This is streaming now on Amazon Prime. Now, there are only 8 episodes of this show, and that's all there's going to be. It was already canceled. It premiered in February, and by April, it was gone. Now, I think part of the reason is Amazon did not promote this show at all. I didn't even know it existed. I was just going through a list of 2025 shows. I'm sort of going back and seeing some of the ones maybe I missed. And this came up, and I thought, well, this is perfect to review in June for Pride Month. It's all about, this character played by Laverne Cox being trans and all of this. But I'm like, why have I not heard of this show at all? Laverne Cox, pretty popular person. You'd think they maybe promoted it, but obviously not so much. So we get just these 8 episodes for this show. And we'll talk about the premise here and my thoughts on it in just a second. First, though, let me welcome you back to the channel. If you're a subscriber already for Dan Reviews It, thank you so much. I love it when you guys return to check out my stuff. But if you're not, please consider subscribing and click that notification bell too, so you get the alerts for all my new videos. And you can just, of course, like this video or comment below. That stuff helps the channel out tremendously. All right, so you've got Laverne Cox, who co-created this show with her co-star George Wallace and showrunner Dan Ewan. And Cox and Wallace play father and daughter. And she is coming home from 23 years of being away. This is an estranged family here. However, he is expecting a son to come home, not realizing that his son has transitioned and is now a daughter named Desiree. And their last name is Slate, Desiree Slate. So that's sort of, the double meaning of actually there's 3 meanings to the title Clean Slate, because not only is that their last name, but because they've been estranged, they want a clean slate with each other. And Harry, the George Wallace character, owns a car wash business, so he's cleaning the cars and all of that, so clean slate. But anyway, he has no idea that a daughter is returning instead of a son. And so, some of the comedy comes from that. But here's the problem. With only 8 episodes, there's not really enough time to dive into, like, big themes like that. And I sort of say this a lot, especially in the streaming era now. These short 8-episode seasons, that is tough for a sitcom to find its footing. We think about some of the classic sitcoms of all time, and a lot of them took a lot more than 8 episodes to really kind of figure out what the show was going to be and to really find its footing. Now, I did review a gay-themed show earlier this year, actually just a few weeks ago, Mid-Century Modern, which is on Hulu. It stars Nathan Lane, and it's sort of, billed as the gay Golden Girls. In fact, I'll put up a link to that review at the end of this. But I thought that first episode was not very good. But each subsequent episode found its footing pretty well. There was 10 episodes for that, and each episode sort of escalated in quality, and it got better and better. Here we have a fairly consistent quality of episodes. There was maybe 1 or 2 that stood out to me more than the rest, but the pilot is fine. It's 20, these episodes are like 22 minutes, like you would get on a broadcast network. And so, they've really got to get in and get out with the premise, with the characters, with the jokes. It's not easy. And I think this show is consistently okay. None of the episodes are like, A+ material, and I think the humor is a bit hit or miss. And we can talk about that in a second. But I think one of the biggest issues I had with this only being 8 episodes is that it didn't really take time to explore how a person like Harry might actually react to finding out after 23 years, of seeing their child, that the child is now a different gender. He seemed to come to it pretty quickly. And there is sort of a running gag, especially in those first few episodes, where there's like a jar, and every time he misgenders her or calls her her dead name, he's got to put $1 or whatever into the jar. It was kind of cute. But in terms of him, like, being okay with it, he was, like, right on board. And I thought there maybe could have been a little bit of tension there for at least a couple of episodes. But here's the problem. If there's only 8 episodes in the whole season, and like, let's say 3 episodes are based on, where the main plot is, him trying to come to terms with it and all of that, that's half the season almost, but I do think he came to it very quickly, like, oh, okay, that's fine. I mean, this is an old dude in, small town Alabama. I don't know. I don't know if I see him saying, oh, okay, sounds great. I just didn't know. It seemed rather quick, but with 8 episodes, that's what you kind of have to do. So I think Amazon did this show a bit of a disservice, not only by not promoting it at all, but by only giving it 8 episodes, because I just don't think it's enough time for the characters to grow. So speaking of the characters, let's talk about a couple other ones. You have Telma Hopkins here, sitcom veteran. Of course, she goes back to the days of Tony, Orlando, and Dawn in the 70s. Sitcom-wise, you had Bosom Buddies and Give Me a Break in the 80s, Family Matters in the 90s. I mean, she's always working, always popping up in something. So great to see her. She plays the mother of Desiree's childhood friend, Lewis, who is played by DK Uzuku, and he is a gay man who is sort of coming to terms with that. And well, he's come to terms with it, but he's a choir director, and so people in the church don't really know. He's not really come out per se, although even the George Wallace character, Harry, seems to have figured it out. So Desiree's like, in one of the episodes, she's like, I don't think you're keeping it in the closet as much as you think. But so they go sort of back to their childhood and kind of commiserate that way, being different as a kid and whatever. And then you also have one of Harry's employees at the car wash, Jay Wilkinson, and his daughter, played by Nora Murphy. They play Mac and Opal. And there's, sort of a bit of a love connection there between Desiree and Mac. And then Opal is one of these classic sitcom, like, smarter than she should be at her age kind of kids. I think we've seen that a lot. I think they kind of perfected it actually in this show a few years ago on ABC. And damn if I can't think of the name of it, but Taran Killam was in it. But there was like a few real smart kids in there, and then Home Economics, also on ABC, that had a couple of smart kids. So we've sort of seen that done to death. The Opal character doesn't really add a whole lot here. So look, overall, this show is okay. I am going to give it a very, very slight positive grade. But I think it definitely needed more room to grow. I think the jokes needed to be a little funnier. There's every so often there would be like an out of left field, kind of gag. Like in one episode, they go to a carnival and there's this Facts of Life throw pillow that I guess had been there since Desiree was young. And Harry was like, oh, you've always wanted that. I'm going to win it for you. You used to love Tootie on the Facts of Life. That was sort of an out of left field joke that I really thought worked. And there's a whole episode, I think it's either episode 6 or 7, about voting and voting suppression. And it was, a little bit of a Norman Lear-esque theme type of episode. And I really enjoyed that. It had some good jokes. If the series sort of turned into this in, what would have been subsequent seasons, I think they would have had a real hit. But unfortunately, Amazon did not give this show enough time to grow. But we do have these 8 episodes to enjoy. I will leave Clean Slate with a C+. You can check this out on, of course, Amazon Prime. All right, thank you so much for watching Dan Reviews It, and I will see you next time. Bye.